What's up, world? I'm Cameron McKinney, and this is Pop Culture Spotlight, a podcast about the movie The Substance. Here's a quick synopsis. Elizabeth Sparkle, a respected movie star, is fired on her 50th birthday and after getting into a car accident, agrees to take a mysterious supplement known as The Substance that creates a younger version of herself that goes by the name of Sue. The film stars Demi Moore, Margret, Qualley, and Dennis Quaid. Standout performances. When it comes to Demi Moore, I was not born during the height of her powers as a movie star during the Brat Pack era, but I have gone back to watch movies like About Last Night. Before The Substance, the two performances of hers I was most fond of was in A Few Good Men, directed by Rob Reiner, written by Aaron Sorkin. It's a performance that grows on me the more I see the film. She's so great with Tom Cruise. The other movie I loved more in was J.C. Chandor's Margin Call. I particularly love her scenes with co-star Stanley Tucci and the scene where Jeremy Iron's character ruthlessly makes Moore's character the scapegoat of the situation they're in. So how exactly did we get to a point where a star like Demi Moore became less relevant? Well, there were two movies that didn't exactly go Moore's way, Striptease and G.I. Jane. Here's when Moore herself told Lulu Garcia Navarro of the New York Times about the perception of her after those films, quote, "Well, with Striptease, it was as if I had betrayed women, and with G.I. Jane, it was as if I had betrayed men. But I think the interesting piece is that when I became the highest paid actress, why is that at that moment the choice was to bring me down? I don't take this personally. I think anyone who had been in that position that was the first to get that kind of equality of pay would probably have taken a hit. But because I did a film that was dealing with the world of stripping and the body, I was extremely shamed," end quote. The up and down nature of Moore's career makes her the perfect choice to play Elizabeth Sparkle. There is a bit of a meta nature to the casting. It's not as obvious as when Michael Keaton was in Birdman, but it's there. Moore is really going for it and giving her all in this performance, and it's very effective. It's far and away the best lead performance of her career. I like it when a well-known performer gives a comeback performance. That makes us all look back at their career, and that's what Moore has given in The Substance. I also loved her appearance in the Hulu documentary Brats about the infamous Brat Pack. She just had a healthy outlook on the whole thing. Movie fans like myself love seeing a star return and given a great role. It's why so many people were pumped when Brendan Fraser won the Oscar for The Whale. He was a guy who was so important to so many people, and Moore is definitely in that category. And this comeback, if that's what you want to call it, has been a long time coming. We always talk about nostalgia when it comes to sequels and remakes, but you can also feel real nostalgia seeing an actor you haven't seen in a while. Demi Moore will next star in writer-director Boots Riley's next film, I Love Boosters, with Lakeith Stanfield, Keke Palmer, Naoma Aki, Isa Gonzalez, Taylor Page, and Will Poulter. The other star of The Substance is Margret Qualley, who has had an impressive 2024 with Ethan Coen's Drive Away Dolls, one of the most underrated films of the year, Yorgos Lanthimos' Kinds of Kindness, where Qualley played 3 different characters in 3 different stories. In The Substance, she plays Sue, which is a difficult role because she's playing an avatar for modern models and influencers. She may not give the performance that everyone is talking about in this movie, but she's really good in it. Qualley's next films include Richard Linklater's Blue Moon with Ethan Hawke, Ethan Coen's Honey Don't with Chris Evans and Aubrey Plaza, John Patton Ford's Huntington with Glenn Powell, and she'll be in Happy Gilmore 2 with Adam Sandler. I've heard people, including famous podcaster and comedian Mark Maron, compare what writer-director Coralie Fargeat has done with The Substance to the work of filmmaker David Cronenberg. And naturally, that makes sense due to the body horror element of the film. But one thing that differentiates itself from Cronenberg's movie is The Substance is blatantly telling the audience what it's about. It's about how celebrity culture and culture at large shames women for aging. There's a brilliant scene where Dennis Quaid's character is firing Demi Moore's character for aging and then immediately calls calls an old man a genius. The movie is about that double standard, whereas with Cronenberg movies, it's not as obvious what his movies are about. I'm not saying that's better or worse, it's just different. And I think because it's easy to tell what this movie is about, it makes the movie more digestible, in fact, because box office, The Substance is one of the big pleasant surprise hits of the year, making over $50 million. I'm always surprised to see which horror films catch on and which ones don't. I'm glad to see that this is one that has. I mean, it's not obvious why this movie is a hit. It's not like Demi Moore equals box office success. I mean, she hasn't been the lead of a hit movie in what, decades now? I don't know why this movie is clicking, but I really do like the fact that it is clicking. This making more money than Ty West's third film in his trilogy, Maxine, is wild to me. I mean, those are movies that built up a reputation. I really thought that Maxine was going to be one of the big surprise hits of the year, and it really wasn't. I mean, there are some people that loved Maxine, there are some people that defended it. I liked the movie, I talked about it on this very podcast, but then a movie like The Substance comes out of nowhere with the critics and becomes a real surprise hit. Good word of mouth really helps horror films more so than any other genre, because the minute you hear that a horror film is doing well, you know a lot of people are going to want to go out and seek that movie. I mean, people are just wide open to seeing good horror films. And the two winners of that this year in 2024 has to be The Substance and Longlegs. Like, I had not even come into the year thinking about these films, and I usually pay attention to what movies are coming out, and then all of a sudden everyone was talking about these two movies. These movies starring Nicolas Cage and Demi Moore. And yes, I think that their star power helped the movie a little. I think people want to see Nicolas Cage in a good horror movie, and again, I think people want to see the return of Demi Moore, but I don't think that's the big selling point of either movie. They're just fresh new horror films. The scenes where they transition from Demi Moore to Margret Qualley are jarring, and you have to see them for yourself to experience it. I mean, this isn't the type of movie that I can really sell all that well on a podcast. It's a movie you want to watch firsthand. And that right there is really what the genre of horror has going for it. Like, if I tell you about a biopic, you can imagine what I'm talking about. We've all watched biopics. We all know the formulas of making them. But when it comes to horror movies, you kind of have to experience them. You have to watch them for yourselves to understand what's going on. To watch Longlegs, to watch The Substance, to watch Maxine. I mean, they are each their own things. You can't just describe to someone what The Substance is. They need to watch the movie for themselves to understand it. I'm sure there are some people out there who are calling out the simplistic nature of the movie. Like I was saying earlier, it is really obvious what this movie is about. But when it comes to horror, I think that's how you're supposed to do it. You're supposed to make the plot of the movie super high concept, which The Substance has, and then for the themes of the movie to be simplistic. They're supposed to be relatable. Like, we go, oh yes, I understand what the movie is trying to say. And I think you get all of that and more with this movie. One of the things that really intrigued me about the movie is that how it opens is with Elizabeth Sparkle having a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and how that basically means absolutely nothing. It's about how so many random people walk by a star every day, and it's not really the symbolic sign of respect we make it out to be, that so many people have stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame that we have forgotten or even disrespected. I fully understand if you're annoyed by a movie that tells you that being famous and seeking fame is bad. I understand that. That's obvious. We've all gotten to a point where we should all understand that. I just think the ways that The Substance is really exploring that is really interesting, to me anyways. Another thing that I glistened from this movie movie is that Margret Qualley Sue is not actually good at anything. She's just more respected than Demi Moore's character because she is viewed as prettier and younger than her. There's a scene in the movie where Margret Qualley Sue is calling out Demi Moore's Elizabeth in a TV interview, and I think the significance of the moment is that the younger generation feels like they have to call out the older generation to get respect from anyone. I mean, both sides are being pitted against one another. I don't believe the movie wants you to walk away from it believing that Sue is the villain of the movie or that Elizabeth is the hero of the movie. I think it's sad that these two women are pitted up against one another, and I think the movie wants you to take note of that. That's how I read it. Oscar chances. So right now there are two categories that I believe The Substance is going to get nominated in. The first is Best Actress for Demi Moore. Hollywood loves a comeback and the idea of giving a star their first ever Oscar nomination. I don't feel great about her chances of winning. As of right now, the prohibitive favorite is Mickey Madison for Anora. The other Oscar nomination that I believe is going to happen is The Substance is going to get nominated for Best Original Screenplay. I would love to see Margret Qualley nominated and to see the film get a Best Picture nomination, but I don't know if that's in the cards for this movie. I do believe the box office success is going to help out this movie's Oscar chances. Overall, the Oscars are way more wide open than they were this time last year, because last year we all knew that Oppenheimer was going to walk away with everything. I mean, there are still movies coming out that are going to be major contenders. I mean, I hear critics talking about Wicked. I have no idea how big of a player that is actually going to end up being. Gladiator 2, I mean, the original film won Best Picture. Is the sequel going to be that same kind of film? The Brutalist is coming out, and there are so many critics who believe that movie's going to come and emerge as the favorite to win Best Picture. What's clear to me is that The Substance is a movie that is getting so much love online for its creativity and for the performances given by Demi Moore and Margret Qualley. So I do believe that this is a movie that's going to last long into the conversation of the Oscars. I think Demi Moore is going to get that first ever Oscar nomination, and it's well deserved. It's about time, and it's the performance that she deserves to get nominated for. One thing that does have me a little concerned is the Oscars' history of not nominating Oscar-worthy performances in horror films. Toni Collette was not nominated for her performance in Hereditary, and neither was Lupita Nyong'o nominated for her performance in Us. I mean, those are two of the best performances of the last few years, and they were ignored by the Oscars. So yes, am I a little worried that the same fate is going to happen for Demi Moore, that we're going to talk about the fact that she's going to get nominated, and then come Oscar nomination day, she's not nominated? That is not out of the realm of possibility here, because the Oscars have not always loved horror films. I do believe the love for the critics and the audience is going to get this movie over that hump, though. I think that you will see The Substance well represented at the Oscars. Getting back to Demi Moore for a moment, it's always interesting to see what a movie like this does for a career like that moving forward. I mean, is Demi Moore now going to be given great roles in films once again? I mean, like I said earlier, she's going to be in the next film from Boots Riley. I mean, I would love to see Demi Moore pop up in films directed by great filmmakers, because throughout her career she has proven that if she's in a film directed by a really good director, she's going to give a really good performance. Rob Reiner with A Few Good Men, J.C. Chandor with Margin Call, and now Coralie Fargeat with The Substance. I feel like sometimes we just view these people as celebrities over performers, but what Demi Moore is a really good, solid actor, and she hasn't always gotten enough credit for that. It's always interesting to think about how sometimes fame gets in the way of work, and I think that was definitely the case for Demi Moore, and no fault of her own. Absolutely absolutely no fault of her own. The perception of her became different than what she actually was, which is a good actress. She's been a good actress this entire time. I mean, you watch a movie like The Substance and you think to yourself, wow, Hollywood could have been getting really good performances from her this entire time, but they wasted her. They wasted her for so many years for so many ridiculous reasons. And that's what this entire movie is about. Because somebody is getting older, we think they are no longer relevant, that they are no longer good at their jobs. But not only with this performance is Demi Moore proving that she's still a really good actress, but it's also being proven that people care about this performance, that people wanted to see Demi Moore in a movie like this from the get-go. The success of this movie and the talk about Demi Moore is proving the point of the movie itself, and I think that's brilliant. Safe to say that this is a movie that, even though it's really big in the zeitgeist right now, I think it will continue to build momentum even after Oscar season. I think people will be talking about this movie for years to come. And as you can tell by listening, I really do hope that it begins this career renaissance for Demi Moore. I can't not talk about Demi Moore without mentioning The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I think it is one of the more underrated Disney films, and she's really good in it as the voice of Esmeralda. And what a movie like this really does for me is it makes me want to go back and watch those Demi Moore performances I'm not quite familiar with. And if you like this movie like I do, you should definitely, if you haven't seen A Few Good Men, I don't know how you couldn't have, but if you haven't seen A Few Good Men, I recommend you check that out. And if you haven't seen Margin Call, you definitely should, because Demi Moore is so good in those films as well. When it comes to writer-director Coralie Fargeat, you just hope that this movie's success makes it so that a studio wants to give her a boatload of money to make whatever horror, body horror she wants to make, or whatever genre of film she wants to make. I just think that's what studios should be investing in. Directors like this who get great performances from well-known stars. That's what sells movies. Great premises, great scripts, and great acting. And The Substance has all three of them. So you would think a studio would go, okay, let's give Coralie Fargeat $50 million for her next movie. I mean, she made The Substance with a budget of $17 million. I'll end the podcast on this. I think you get the best social commentary from horror films, because with horror films, they can hide the social commentary under the fantastical elements that are happening in the movies themselves. So yes, the social themes are all there for The Substance, but what's selling the movie for a lot of people is the high concept of the younger version of Demi Moore's character. I mean, that's what people are going to see. They want to see this movie. Oh, there's this movie out there where this character played by Demi Moore creates another version of herself. That's something that I want to see. But then you go see the movie, and what grabs you is the social commentary about aging and celebrity culture. If you made a sincere movie about those things without the horror elements, you would not get the audience that this movie got. That's why a lot of people navigate towards horror films, because they can say things about the world that they want to say through the horror of it all. That's why all the best filmmakers right now are seemingly making horror films. Jordan Peele, Robert Eggers, Ari Aster. Audiences are just more willing to accept social commentary in horror films, and all of these brilliant writer-directors understand that, and Coralie Fargeat definitely understands that. So what she did is she made a horror film with a high concept, but with a simple message. And based on the success of The Substance, that message has definitely been well received. Most surprisingly, at the box office, just to put in some context, The Substance has made more money than a studio horror film, Abigail, and a studio film, Fly Me to the Moon, which starred Channing Tatum and Scarlett Johansson. It's rare to see an indie film do so well critically and financially. Thanks for listening to this edition of Pop Culture Spotlight. I'm Cameron McKinney, and there'll be a new episode of the podcast every Thursday on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I highly recommend you check out The Substance. Next week on the podcast, I'm talking about Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis, starring Adam Driver. So tune into that, and please rate, review, and subscribe.